Greetings, fellow book lovers, and welcome back to Colin's Corner. Today, I will be doing a non-spoiler review of the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. But before we get into the video, we have to quickly go over the answer for the last Comedy with Colin segment where I asked you guys to joke, how does the ocean say hello? The answer? It waves. Alrighty, with that out of the way, let's get on to this review. So the Greenbone Saga is an Asian-inspired fantasy series comprised of 3 books. So we have Jade City, Jade War, and Jade Legacy. Now, if you have been consuming BookTube for the last 2 to 3 years, you have certainly heard about the Greenbone Saga. This series came in and took the fantasy book community by storm, and usually when a book, when a series, or when an author is able to essentially create waves in an established community, there are a couple of reasons that happens. They're doing something a little bit different. They have something about their series or their writing or their world that people find particularly special or different. And that seemed to be the case with all of the things that I was hearing about the Greenbone Saga, and it definitely piqued my interest and kind of pushed me, propelled me even further, faster to try to get to this series. And I am so happy that I finally made the dive into this world that Fonda Lee created. So what is this series about? So the island nation of Kekon is the only place in this fictional world where the natural resource jade can be found. Now, jade is mined from the ground, and in this part of the world, possession of jade essentially determines the hierarchy of society. With a resource as powerful as jade, the next logical question would be, who controls it? And that question essentially leads us directly into the first book in this series, Jade City. Within the city of Janloon, which is the capital of Kekon, there is an established government. However, what we are primarily following throughout the entirety of the Greenbone Saga is the seedy underground world that exists between the clans of this city. The 2 biggest clans are called the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan, and these clans are the real controllers of jade and therefore the real power wielders of this world. This city, specifically Janloon, is centered completely culturally around jade, hence the nickname of Janloon, Jade City, and also the name of the first book. The magic system in this series is based around jade. So Greenbone is the name of the series, but it is also what anybody who wields jade in this world is referred to as. They refer to as a Greenbone. The Greenbone warriors of the clans are trained in specialized academies that teach their students how to use the 6 disciplines, which are strength, steel, perception, lightness, deflection, and channeling. So the warriors of the clans may either wear their jade, as in jewelry, or in many cases what happens is that they actually get the jade stones embedded into their body in some way, which is super freaking cool. And what this does, what jade does to the natives of this island and to the warriors that are specifically trained to use jade, is it enhances their 6 abilities, the 6 abilities that I just discussed, and essentially makes them superhuman in their ability to use these 6 disciplines that they go to these specialized schools to learn about. The hierarchy of the clans, the way that these clans are structured, is pretty awesome and I think is worth just going over briefly. So the leader of each clan is called the Pillar. Now the Pillar is often referred to throughout the series as the spine of the clan. They are the glue that keeps everything together. Directly underneath the Pillar we have the Pillarman, the Horn, and the Weatherman. The Pillarman is essentially the right-hand man of the Pillar. They are somebody who is carefully selected by the Pillar to aid them in whatever it is that the Pillar needs of them. So the Pillarman's job is not necessarily very specialized in one certain aspect of clan business. However, they are there to be with the Pillar in whatever it is that the Pillar requests of them. The Horn is the military leader of the clan, and usually their brutal reputation precedes them. The Horn is in charge of protecting all of the clan's territories and its members, and the Weatherman is essentially the head of the business operations of the clan. Now, they make decisions on how to best run the clan from a financial standpoint, and are in charge of collecting tribute money from some of the tributary clans and tributary businesses that are connected to certain clans, and they also basically just deal with any monetary matters that affect the clan. Next, we have Fists. Now, these guys are the level directly below the Horn, and they are high-ranking Greenbone warriors within the clan, and usually are assigned to a specific district to man and make sure that it is protected, and they report directly to the Horn. Underneath the Weatherman, we have Luckbringers and Lantern Men. The Luckbringers are more or less the business warriors of the clan. They do not have to wear jade, but they can. Some examples of somebody that might be a Luckbringer would be like lawyers or accountants, who essentially just protect the clan's best interests. Lantern Men show loyalty to the clan by paying tribute money, and in return for that, they get protection from the pillar, from the clan, in any kind of clan warfare that might be taking place on their territory. Last but not least, at the bottom of this hierarchy, we have White Rats and Fingers. So White Rats are essentially non-jade wearing operatives that work for the clan, and they are used more or less as spies, maybe in a dangerous situation where somebody might need to get some information in enemy territory. So they're secret ops, basically, that kind of try to fly under the radar, and again, they don't wear jade. And lastly, we have Fingers, who are basically just entry-level jade warriors. They are the bottom of the barrel, and they start there to work their way up within the clan. Over the course of this series, we are following the Call family, who are the leaders of the No Peak clan. So through the eyes of 4 different POV characters that are members of the Call family, we get to watch how this clan warfare unfolds within the city of Janloon initially, and then beyond as the series progresses. Jade City introduces us to Call Lon, Call Hilo, Call Shay, and Emery Andon. Over the course of this first book, we really get to spend a lot of time within these characters' minds and get to know them on a deep level. So Call Lon is the voice of reason within the clan. He's the oldest of the Call siblings and is the current pillar of the No Peak clan. Call Hilo is an absolute hothead and a savage warrior. He is the Horn. Call Shay is Lon and Hilo's younger sister, and she is a trained jade warrior. She did go through the academy, but she chooses to not partake in clan business and not wear any jade. And then Emery Andon is not technically related to the Call family, but was adopted by them when he was very young and is essentially part of the family. So these are the POV characters that we are following throughout the course of this series, and the ones that we really get to know, like I said, on a very deep and intimate level. We also do get to know many of the members of the opposing Mountain clan. However, I'm not going to go through too many of them, but I do just want to briefly mention Ait Mata, who is the pillar of the Mountain clan, and she is totally ruthless and is one of the most terrifying women. I would not want to mess with her, and she was definitely one of the most well-written, I would say, antagonists that I've read so far this year. While Jade City's scope is rather small in comparison to the other books, it does serve to really set the stage for the rest of the series, and there is still plenty of excitement packed into this first book. And one of the coolest things was just really getting to experience this world for the first time that Fonda Lee created for us. Right from the beginning of the series, I got this feeling that the culture was just so rich with history, and this world truly felt so lived in to me. We were getting to see how the clans and their operations have an effect on just Janloon, this first city that we're introduced to, mainly in this first book. And then we move on to Jade War, where the scope of the series really kind of takes off. So in Jade War, we begin to see how the Jade and the clan wars within the city of Janloon and in K-Con not only affect this area, but how they have effects on other countries and other areas of this world. And in my opinion, Jade Legacy, the final installment of this trilogy, really just kind of knocked it out of the park. It was not what I expected, but it was awesome in its own right. I think that, I didn't really go into Jade Legacy with any expectations of what was going to happen because I had been surprised by so many things up until this point. But what I do kind of want to say is that, I think that I feel people that say Jade Legacy, the final book in the trilogy, maybe didn't work for them. And I don't want to put words into other people's mouths, but this is listed as a fantasy series. And I feel like sometimes people wanted a more traditional fantasy feel and end to this. And my interpretation of it was more that this was like a crime mafia type story. And that part of it was super awesome. So I don't know. I loved it. I know tons of people love it. I'm not speaking about the majority. I'm speaking about the minority of people who maybe say that Jade Legacy didn't quite work for them. And I've not heard anybody straight up not like it. But I think, not going into it with any expectations of how this book was going to end and this trilogy was going to end, I think really allowed me to just kind of open my mind up and enjoy the ride that Fonda Lee was taking me on. I was pleasantly surprised at how invested in these characters I was by the end of this series. So we see multiple extremely intriguing character arcs from our POV characters, and some of them had somewhat predictable character arcs, but some of their character arcs totally blindsided me, and I had no idea that I was going to be rooting for, against certain characters in this series. So Fonda Lee's character work, I would say, is probably what surprised me the most about this series. I had heard lots about how cool the world was, how cool the magic system was, and not as much hype about how really fleshed out her characters were. So if you're somebody that really likes good, deep character work and you feel like you get to know the characters, and even though it may not be the main focus of the story, but you're more of a character reader, that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're going to pick this series up, because I thought the character work was absolutely tremendous in this series. Overall, I had a blast with this series. I don't really do star ratings, but I will say that I enjoyed each book in this trilogy progressively more than the last one. So I enjoyed Jade City a lot, but I enjoyed Jade War even more than I enjoyed Jade City, and then I enjoyed Jade Legacy even more than I enjoyed the first two, with how this story kind of wrapped itself up. So, what Fonda Lee has created with the Greenbone Saga, for me, was an extremely welcome breath of fresh air in fantasy literature. So there's an interview with the author type of thing at the end of might have been the first book or the series, I can't exactly remember, but I don't usually read those, and for some reason I did read it with this one, and Lee kind of talks about her influences in the old style gangster movies like The Godfather, Scarface, and Goodfellas, and you can really feel the tone of those movies and those types of stories throughout the entire course of this series. And I love those movies. I love the way that those movies made me feel, and the way that the characters were portrayed, and the way that conflict happened and arose and was solved in those types of movies. So if you were a fan of movies like that, which a lot of people are, this series is a really fun kind of take on that has the same feel. Lee is also a trained martial artist. I believe she is a black belt in karate and kung fu, and that added a really cool twist to the battle sequences in this book. It was, for me, it felt more of like a artistic description of the battle, which was different. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of brutal moments in this series, but the way that Lee kind of does her battle sequences, the respect and the reverence that she has for these types of art forms can really, really become apparent as you read through this series. And I thought that was really cool and something a little bit different than what I'd been used to reading in the fantasy genre. So if you are a fan of fantasy, but maybe just in the mood for something a little bit different, a little bit out of the box, I would highly suggest at least giving Jade City, the first book in this trilogy, a try and see if it clicks with you. and hopefully it does and you want to continue, and I hope if you do that you enjoyed it as much as I did. That is going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you've read the Greenbone Saga, drop down in the comments below and let me know what you thought about it. If you were going to talk any spoilers, please just remember to do the space thing so you don't ruin any plot events for anybody who may not have read this series yet. And if you have not read the Greenbone Saga yet, let me know if this video was helpful to you. I hope it was helpful in some way in deciding whether or not you want to take the plunge into this series. Before we end the video, guys, we of course have to do comedy with Colin, and today's joke is going to be, what is the best thing about living in Switzerland? If you think you know the answer, drop it down in the comments below. Guys, if you like this video, please give it a like. If you are enjoying the content I'm releasing, please do consider subscribing. I hope you are all enjoying what you're currently reading, and remember, you're always welcome in Colin's Corner.